Hello, awesome humans. I'm Natalie, and today I want to share with you 3 tips to help you deal with uncertainty with a little bit less stress and anxiety. The thing is, uncertainty is part of life. It's just part of being human, and yet it can be really difficult to handle. So I'm hoping these tips will help. Before we dive in, if you like this video, please like it, please leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. I share videos like this weekly, almost weekly.
Hello, awesome humans.
And it takes courage to say that your brain is not your master.
All right, let's talk about how to deal with uncertainty. Now, before I give you 3 really practical tips and strategies, I just want to highlight for you why uncertainty is so difficult for us humans to handle. Here's the thing. Your brain only cares about one thing: your safety. So your brain's number one job is how to keep you safe from danger. And I think being alive is kind of cool, so I like that my brain is focused on that. But the downside of that is anytime there's uncertainty of any kind, your brain begins to look for signs of danger within it. So to your brain, uncertainty is really, really scary because it doesn't know how to protect you. It doesn't know where the danger is. And so what the brain doesn't give up. It doesn't say, okay, forget it. It actually releases a lot of stress hormones because it's trying really, really hard to see if there's any danger, which is why uncertainty causes us so much anxiety. The other thing your brain does in uncertainty is it makes up really kind of dramatic worst case scenario stories about the future, because it turns out that your brain would rather know that something really bad is going to happen than to face uncertainty. And that's because even when it knows something bad will happen, it knows what to do, right? But uncertainty means it doesn't know how to keep you safe. And so that's just something to become aware of. It's really helpful to understand why uncertainty is so stressful for us. So now that you have that awareness, let's talk about 3 things that you can do to reduce some of that stress and anxiety that you feel when things are uncertain. The first is recognize that just because your brain offers you a stressful thought about uncertainty or the future does not mean that you need to accept it. What do I mean by that? Well, this might sound strange, but you are in charge of your brain, not the other way around. Your brain thinks all kind of thoughts. Some of them are rational and some of them are not. Some of them are really dramatic and it's kind of has nothing to do with reality. And so the number one thing to help you deal with uncertainty with less stress is to become aware when your brain is making up these really dramatic stories about the future, only focusing on what could go wrong, and to become aware of that and then ask yourself, is this thought helpful to me? Like, is it helpful to be thinking about all the horrible things that could happen? Is it helpful to constantly ruminate on that? And if the answer is no, the answer is always no, because how is stress helpful? If the answer is no, then ask yourself, how can I shift, right? So that's your first practice, that's your first tip, is to just become aware of when your brain is running away into the future with these kind of dramatic scenarios and fear-based thoughts, and then to ask yourself, is this thought helpful? And when the answer is no, to recognize that you can shift. You have the power to shift. So instead of ruminating on that horrible thing that your brain is telling you is going to happen, what do you know to be true? And to pull yourself back. The second strategy, it might sound a little bit counterintuitive, but here is my second tip to help you deal with uncertainty. Give yourself permission to actually think about the worst case scenario. The first tip I just shared was about becoming aware when your brain is just running away, making up all kinds of stories that are stressing you out about uncertainty or your future, and then ask yourself, is this helpful? The second tip is to actually say, okay, you know what, brain? Let's actually think about it. Let's go through the worst thing that can happen. Let's say you're applying for a job and it's a lot of uncertainty, you're stressed out. Okay, what's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is probably you don't get the job. So actually give yourself permission to think about it. What is going to happen? Okay, I don't get this job. I feel like crap. I feel like I'm disappointing people in my life. Like, I'm not saying this is going to be pleasant, but there's huge power in kind of acknowledging the worst case scenario, actually thinking through. And what happens most often is you recognize, yes, it might be difficult. Yes, it might be unpleasant, but you can get through it. And that actually gives your brain a sense of safety about uncertainty because now you have thought about the worst case scenario. So that's your second tip to handle uncertainty, is to actually think through, okay, what is the worst thing that can happen? And get really specific. One of the things that causes a lot of anxiety for us is when things are really vague, right? Oh, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Things are so uncertain. I'm really stressed out. That's really vague, and we don't know what to do with this. It just causes anxiety. So in the second strategy, you're actually saying, okay, let me think about it. What is the worst thing that can happen? And actually think it through. And by clarifying the vagueness, by getting really specific, you are giving your brain and yourself a sense of safety that, yes, even if the worst thing happens, okay, it's not going to be great and it's not going to be pleasant. But I know what it looks like. I don't need to ruminate on it. And I know I've done hard things. I can get through that. And my third tip to help you deal with uncertainty with a little less anxiety is to zoom in on the present. So uncertainty causes us so much anxiety and stress because remember, the brain is looking into the future, it's looking into the uncertainty, and it's trying to find any signs of danger, and it's really stressed out. So zoom in on the present, kind of pull back that line and say, okay, instead of worrying about what might or might not happen a month from now, what can I do today or this week or in the next couple days to help myself be at my best for whatever it is I am doing, right? And one of the most powerful ways that I can suggest to you to kind of pull yourself back into that present is to practice gratitude. Gratitude is simply a skill of focusing on things that you appreciate about your present moment, about your life. So comforts, people who are there to support you, things about yourself, your strengths. And so when you practice gratitude, when you focus your attention on, here are some things that I appreciate about my life, that helps your brain relieve a little bit of its fear about the future, and instead reminds it that there are okay, good things now. And I'm not asking you to kind of ignore anything that's wrong, but when you practice gratitude, you actually give yourself resilience and strength to handle whatever uncertain challenges may be coming your way. So these are your 3 tips to deal with uncertainty with a little bit less stress and anxiety. The first is become aware when your brain is running away into the future with all kinds of dramatic and negative scenario thoughts. Ask yourself, is this helpful? And then if it's not helpful, which usually is not, shift, ask yourself, what thought would be more helpful? The second tip is to actually give yourself permission to think through the worst case scenario. So what is the worst thing that's going to happen? The brain of yours is stressing about it. Get specific about it. What is the worst thing that's going to happen? And then think about, well, when this happens, here is how I'm going to react and how I can get through it. And that gives your brain a sense of safety. And the third tip to help you deal with uncertainty is to zoom in, to focus your attention instead of the future on the present moment. And the best way to do that is to practice gratitude and actively appreciate things in your life as they are now, not to ignore challenges that might be coming up or things that are difficult, but to give yourself strength and resilience, and to have your brain not focus so much of its attention on the future, but also on the present. I hope these are helpful. I always love hearing from you all. So if this resonates, if you have a question about something, please leave it in the comments. And I wish you an awesome rest of your week. I'll see you next week. Bye.